On July 1st, every American making under $43,888 a year will no longer be considered an exempt employee. And on January 1st, that rule will extend to every American making under $58,656 a year, which means 4 million new Americans are about to become eligible for overtime pay by being reclassified as non-exempt workers. So what does that mean for you? What is the difference between an exempt and non-exempt worker, and is this transition a good thing? It is a lot to go over, so please be sure to like this video and subscribe if you are new, and let's just get right into it. So what is an exempt worker? Being exempt means that you don't earn overtime pay for working more than 40 hours in any given week. Prior to this new ruling, anyone making over $35,568 salary was eligible to be classified as exempt by their company. This meant that companies could not pay those workers more money or less money based off of how many hours that they worked. An exempt worker simply has a flat salary that they earn regardless of if they work 20 hours a week or 150 hours a week. It does not matter. I am a classic example of an exempt employee at my university. I earn a flat salary and I never track my time. But I also work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every workday, as well as doing some events after working hours. And so I technically clock anywhere from 45 to 50 hours of work a week, but my pay does not change because I am an exempt employee. If I were a non-exempt employee, then I could be eligible for 5 to 10 hours of overtime pay almost every week because of those hours that I work. Once a non-exempt worker goes over 40 hours, that company legally has to pay them in comp time or an overtime pay, which is 1.5 times their hourly rate. So let's say that you make $30 an hour. As a non-exempt employee, you will start making $45 an hour for every hour that you work past 40 hours a week. So in a 40-hour week at $30 an hour, you would bring home $1,200 before tax. But in an 80-hour week, you would actually bring home $3,000 before tax, which is $600 more than if you had been working 80 hours at your standard rate of $30 an hour, because once you hit 40 hours, you started to get paid at 45 as opposed to 30. Now, an alternative to overtime pay that companies can legally offer is something called comp time. This is when you are given paid time off as opposed to hourly pay for working more than 40 hours a week. So, for example, if you worked an 80-hour week, then you could earn an entire week of paid time off for working 40 hours more than your usual work week. Comp time is really common in organizations that don't have a lot of extra money, so think like schools, government agencies, and nonprofits, whereas overtime pay is really common in private sector organizations like healthcare and construction. In fact, a big part of why a lot of people are drawn to blue-collar labor and healthcare is because of the sheer amount of money that they can make due to overtime pay. Whereas one of the big appeals of working for a school or working in the government is the sheer amount of paid time off that you can accumulate. Each option has its pros and cons, but both options basically exist as a way to discourage organizations from working people more than 40 hours a week. And that legal protection has existed in America since 1938 with the introduction of the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA. And this new law going into effect is actually an update of the FLSA. So the previous threshold for being an exempt worker was anyone making at least $35,568 per year. A company could not legally consider anyone making under that threshold exempt, meaning that anyone making under approximately $35K a year would have to be given either overtime pay or comp time for working more than 40 hours in any given week. And less than 2 months ago, the Department of Labor announced that they would be updating the FLSA laws in 2 major ways. First, they rolled out a new threshold for salaried workers to be exempt starting on January 1st, 2025. That new number is going to be $58,656 a year. But not only did they make that change, the DOL actually decided to roll out this new law on July 1st, where a new temporary threshold of $43,888 is going to be set, which is very soon and very sudden, hence why I'm making a video about this. So subscribe for more hard-hitting job market commentary. But that new threshold is not the only change the Department of Labor has made to the Fair Labor Standards Act. The law is also going to now be automatically updated every 3 years starting in 2027. Much like minimum wage laws, FLSA exemptions have not caught up with inflation, and therefore its protections have applied to fewer and fewer American workers every year. This update is meant to both protect a larger percentage of American workers over time, but also in the short term to address the massive swath of American employees earning relatively lower salaries who are not eligible for overtime or comp pay. Like I mentioned before, there are currently 4 million workers in the United States who make between $35K and $58K who are considered as exempt workers. Starting on January 1st, every single one of those people will be moved to non-exempt status. And that does come with additional burdens and protocols. Now all of these new workers will have to track their time, and they will have to learn about what actually counts as working hours. So things like being expected to answer emails on weekends, being on call, traveling for your company, and going to trainings, even if they aren't happening within your standard working hours, will all count as time that you will have to be compensated for. And that's something that a lot of workers and a lot of employers are not used to with their exempt employees. But because this new ruling rolls out in less than 2 weeks, a lot of employers are going to have to figure it out real quick. And you, as the American worker, need to understand how this all works so that you can both protect yourself and make sure that you are being compensated what you are legally owed. I've linked the new ruling in the description below, so definitely check that out, and I will see you in the next video.